We begin today the Gemara at the Mishnah at the beginning of Daf Ayin. Talk to the Mishnah, Me'ei Masai Chayev. We're talking about the Ben Seirer Meire. How and when is he going to be Chayev Misa for being this rebelling child? V'sheyochal tartimer basar. When he eats the amount of a tartimer of basar. And we'll see in the Gemara what the amount of a tartimer is. And v'yishta chatzi lug yayin o italki. And he drinks a half a lug of Italian wine. Why it's Italian wine? Because it's a very good quality wine. And that's something that draws. And if he's drinking this wine, that means that he's going to drink more and more and more. As we know by Ben Seirer and Meire, the whole punishment of Misa today, when he's so young, is because the Torah says, Al Shem Seifa, we see where he's heading to. So it has to be dafka when he eats and drinks to this extent, where it's something that's going to draw him in more and more. So that's dafka this Bishmaka wine. It doesn't have to be dafka Italian wine. It could be other wine as well that is also a very unique, good wine. Rabbi Yosi says, mana basar. No, he has to eat a mana of basar. Mana is a coin, and it has to be the basar that's that weight of a mana of money. And velug yayin, and it has to be a whole lug of wine. Okay, so that's the machlokes. When you get to how much wine and basar he has to eat.
It seems like very little, no?
A mana. Why? A mana is not necessarily so little. The money then those days went by weight, and a mana is 100, whatever it is, huh?
100 zuz.
100 zuz. Yeah, it's not so little necessarily.
What Rashi seems to emphasize over here, that and if not,
and a chanami. So in those times it was Italian wine, but it says in Mefarshim that today, I don't know if Italian wine today is the best wine. If there's other wine that are also French wine. Okay, so then it's also
wine.
Okay, Israeli wine.
The point is
this is what draws him into it more and more. Zok the Mishnah, Acha b'chaburas mitzvah. If he's eating in a group for the sake of a mitzvah, a sudas mitzvah, so then even if he's eating this, and even if the point there is, one of the things about the Ben Seirer and Meire is that he's stealing money from his father to go ahead and buy himself this wine and this meat. So even if he stole from his father, but then when he eats and drinks the wine, it's in a chabur of a mitzvah, or achal be'ibra chaydish. There was a special suda that they made by the ibra chaydish. We'll see soon in the Gemara what this was about. It's also for the sake of a mitzvah. Or another case, achal ma'isa sheni be'Yerushalayim. The ma'isa sheni that was brought to Yerushalayim, and then they would buy from the money whether meat or wine. So he went and bought from the food of ma'isa sheni. He bought for himself this wine and he ate. He stole the ma'isa sheni, even if he stole it, and then he bought from it wine and meat. He's not gonna be chayev. Or also another case, achal nevelis, atrefis, shkatzim, uramasim. If he's eating non-kosher meat, any of these cases, nevelis, atrefis, shkatzim, uramasim, he's also not going to be chayev as well. Okay, the Gemara will bring the source for this. Now, the next line over here in the Mishnah, they were achal tevel, ma'aser rishon, shalei nitl trumasa, ma'aser sheni v'ekta shalei nivdu. So many of the Rishonim say not to be good as this, because if the whole thing about the Ben Seirer and Meire is that he's eating meat and drinking wine, so regarding eating meat for sure, it's not shaykh to say any of these things over here about tevel, ma'aser rishon, shalei nitl trumasa, and so on, because this is all produce. We're not talking about meat here. Okay, achal davar shuhu mitzvah. If he eats something that is a mitzvah, the Gemara explained what this adds. Even though we said before chaburas mitzvah, here it says if he eats and it's a mitzvah, or davar shuhu aveda. If he eats and it was an aveda, or achal kol meichel, he ate any other food, even if he's eating a lot and stealing and eating, but v'lo yachal basar, but he didn't eat meat. Shasa kol mashke, he drank all kinds of drinks, v'lo shasa yayin, but not wine. Einay nasa ben seirer meira. He will not become a Ben Seirer Meira only by eating meat and drinking wine. Shenemar Zaylul v'Seive. This is the expression the Gemara uses regarding the Ben Seirer Meira, Zaylul v'Seive, which literally means that he's overeating and he's a glutton, and he drinks gozler. Okay, that's a simple translation. But the Gemara Mishnah now here brings that it means dafke meat and wine. Although there's no clear proof for this, but you can bring somewhat of a source for this. Shanema, the pasuk says, "Al tihi b'seive yayin b'zeile basar lamai." So here it uses the term seive for yayin and zeile for basar. So we see that that's what it refers to. It's a pasuk in Mishlei. It's not necessarily a pure raya. You could say it's just an example, but nevertheless it uses that expression in the pasuk. So we see as well here that Zel v'Seiva means basar and yayin. And again, the point is dafke basar and yayin, because these are things that we know that will draw this child into continuing with this behavior more and more, and therefore the Torah says it's chayiv misa right now. When it says, the Tanakama says, it has to be a tartimer of meat, any yedei amau. So I don't know what's the amount of a tartimer. Now, if you look at the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, and he argues with the Tanakama, when it comes to wine, the Tanakama said a half a lug, and he says a full lug. So that means that Rabbi Yossi is saying double. So nimtza koifel af bebasar. So that means that when he says that by the basar it should be the weight of a moneh, so that means that by basar he's also saying to double the amount of the Tanakama. So v'nimtza tartimar is chatzi moneh. Tartima would be a half a moneh, the weight of a half a moneh of meat. Amar Rav Chanan bar Meilada, Amar Rav Huna, Eina chayiv. This Ben Seder is not chayiv. Ad sheikach basar bezoil v'yechol yayin bezoil, until he buys the meat for a cheap price, and he eats it, and also the wine he buys it for cheap and he drinks it. The chsev, and the source for this is the lashon of the pasuk where it says zoil v'seiva. That now zoil v'seiva simply means that he's drinking, he's a guzzler, but we're also darshaning that zoil means that he buys it for zoil, for cheap. It's Rashi says it's only an asmachta. It's not the simple pshat of the pasuk. But the point there is, if he's paying expensive, full price for this, so then we're not afraid that he's going to continue in his behavior. But if he's getting this for cheap, and he's going to do this again and again for a cheap price, then al shem seifei, that's when he's chayiv misa. He's only chayiv if he's drinking, or he's eating, that is, raw meat, and he's drinking wine that's not diluted. So in fact, the Gemara, Eini, is this true? But Rabbe, Rav Yosef, Damri Tarvayu, Rabbe and Rav Yosef both said, Achal basachai, v'shasa yayin chai, one that eats raw meat or drinks wine as is without being diluted, Einanasa ben Seirer Meira, then he will not become a ben Seirer Meira. So Ravina answers that it has to be yayin chai, means mazik v'loy mazik. When we said before that it's wine as is, it means it is diluted a little bit, but not the way it's usually diluted. Not sometimes the Gemara says that in those times the wine was so strong that they had to have 3/4 water and 1/4 wine, or 2/3 water and 1/3 wine. But over here it's a little bit diluted, but not as much as usual. And the same thing, similar, basachai means bashal v'loy bashal. It's cooked, but it's not properly cooked. And that's kibasa kiva, the achli gamvi. This is like the meat that's placed on coals and it's singed by the coals, as the ganovim that eat this way. So the point there is, again, that if he eats and drinks meat and wine in a way where he wastes until it's fully cooked or it's fully properly diluted, so this is not a kind of behavior that we're afraid that he's totally wild behavior that he's going to continue with it. But if he's doing the way it is by ganovim, and the way he drinks wine in this unique way, that it's going to draw more into it, only then is he chayiv. Rabbi Rav Yosef Damri Tarvayu, Achal Basar Maliach, if he ate meat that was salted, or V'shasa Yayin Migitai, he drinks wine right after the grapes are pressed, basically grape juice, then Einanasa ben Seirer Meira, he will not be a ben Seirer Meira. Okay, so now the Gemara will explain what exactly is considered to be salted. When do we say that this is salted and therefore he's not going to be chayiv? And what's the story with the wine over here when we say that it's fresh or freshly pressed and therefore it's not yet? Till what point is this? So to explain this, the Gemara first brings a Mishnah regarding Erev Tisha B'Av. Tanan Asam in Masechta Tainis we learned Erev Tisha B'Av. On Erev the Suda Samav Sekis, on Erev Tisha B'Av, Lo Yechal Adam Shnei Tavshilin, you should not eat 2 cooked foods. V'lo Yechal Basa v'lo Yishta Yain, and that meal you shouldn't eat meat or drink wine. Now, Vatane and Abraisa, we learned about this. Avol oichelhu basa meliach v'shoyse yayin migitay. But you are allowed to eat salted meat or wine, freshly pressed wine, grape juice. Now, basa meliach. So there, regarding that suda, the suda samav sekis, so it says, at kama, what's considered to be salted meat? If you just put some salt in the meat, right away it's called salted meat. That it's not regular meat. So it says over here. Let's see. I don't know if it's talking about what we do today, that what's preserved. I'm not 100% sure if it's that same minion. Okay, could be. So he says, up until what point is this? As long as in the time period that you can eat a carbon shlomim, which is 2 days and a night. If it's salted meat, but it's still within the first 2 days and a night from when you preparing this meat, it's still considered to be like fresh meat. It's not salted meat yet. Rashi brings it because the pasuk by the Shlomim says v'zavachta shlomim v'achalta sham v'samachta, that you eat the carbon shlomim with simcha, which means in the time period that you could eat the carbon shlomim, there's still a simcha in the meat. It's still gishmak, a good meat. But after this time period of a day, 2 days and a night, then you don't have the simcha. If it's salted, then it's already salted meat. It's not fresh meat anymore. So you'd be allowed to eat this by the Sudas Hamafsekes on Erev Tisha B'Av. Now v'yayim yigito yet kama, when it says there wine, freshly pressed wine is not yet wine until when is this? Kozman shu taisis. If it's still taisis, how do they translate taisis over there? If it's still
uncovered liquid. Fermenting wine.
Fermenting. It's still fermenting wine. There's still, Rashi says, when you drink it, you feel like this something in it, that it's still like some taste in it, that it's not yet wine. Now it brings a raya for this. Vatanya, as we learned in the Braise, yayin taisis ein by mishum gilui. Usually there's an issue of leaving wine uncovered overnight because a snake could come and drink from it and put his venom inside. But if it's this fresh wine that's still taisis, it's still fermenting, then there's no issue of it being left uncovered because they don't come to this. Now, v'kama tisisasai, how long? How long after it was pressed? Shloisha yamim. The first 3 days, if it's after the first 3 days, then it's still basically pure grape juice. But after that, it's already considered to be wine, and you're not allowed to drink it by the Sudas Hamafsekes. Okay, so this is the halacha regarding the Sudas Hamafsekes and Erev Tisha B'Av. Just the halacha though, our minig is not to eat any meat or any wine, even grape juice by the Sudas Hamafsekes, even if it's salted or even if it's grape juice. Okay, now, but the question is, hacha mai, regarding the ben Sayyid Umayra, what is this salted meat and this wine that's fresh that we say that he will not be chayav for ben Sayyid Umayra? So, do I compare it to what we just taught over here regarding the Sudam of Sekas on Erev Tisha B'Av? Do I say hasam mishum simcha? So now over there, so the Gemara says over there. So the Gemara is explaining. The Gemara is answering over there mishum simcha. There, the point is that we don't want to drink or eat this meat at this time because of the simcha that it brings. So calls man shu kishlamim nami is be simcha. So even if it's not mamish fresh meat anymore, it's already a day old, 2 days old, and it was salted, but there's still a simcha in it, as it says by the Karban Shlamim. So that's why that's even after 2.5 days, up to 2.5 days. Hacha mishum imshuchihu. Here though, there's something else. Here, the reason why it has to be dafka fresh meat for him to be a ben Sayyid and Meire is because only when he eats very good quality meat, then he's going to be drawn after to eat more of it. And therefore, b'chol shuhu lo mimshach. As soon as it's salted, so then right away we say, okay, that even a very short period of time, this is not anymore the fresh meat that he's going to be nimshach, he's going to be drawn after this, and therefore he's not going to be chayiv. And now v'yayin, regarding the wine as well, ad mem yaim, it's not going to be considered to be good quality wine that is going to be drawn after this, unless it's wine that's already 40 days after the grapes were pressed. Talk to Gemara. So now the Gemara continues here and starts a sugya all about wine, about the negative outcomes of drinking wine when you don't drink wine properly. So Rav Chanan said, wine was only created in the world to console the mourners, or the shalom schar l'reshayim, and to give reward for the wicked in this world, and then they come in Olam, and they come in Olam Haba, they go into Gehenna. Shenema, the pasuk says, Tnu shecha la'ovid, give wine la'ovid, which means to the rishayim, which will be lost, which will be destroyed in Olam Haba, and v'yayin l'mari nefesh, and wine for those that are bitter here in this world, and because of their mourning, and that's they drink wine to take away the mourning. Rabbi Yitzchak said, "My dechsiv." What's the meaning of the pasuk where it says, "Al teira yayin ki yisadam"? Don't look after wine, which you'll become red with it. What does this mean? Al teira yayin. Don't follow wine. Shemadim peneim shel rishayim b'olam hazeh. It makes the rishayim's face red in this world. They get all happy with the wine that they drink, but a malbim peneim lo'olam haba. But then in Olam Haba, they become embarrassed from their behavior in this world. Rav Alma means Al Teira Yayin Ki Yisadam. Al Teira Yayin, don't see and drink too much wine, Shachris Edam, because the end is it brings to spilling blood. Rav Kahana asks, in the Pasik, this is the bracha of Yitzchak, so it says Tirosh. It doesn't say with a vav, so it's read, or it's written as Tirosh. Well, Karinan though, but the way it's pronounced is Tirosh. What does this mean? Zacha, if you marry it and you drink wine properly, nasa reish, you become a head. Loi zacha, if you do not merit and you don't drink wine properly, nasa rosh, you become poor. Rava Rami.
So they have a wine called Tirosh.
Tirosh wine, yeah. Rava Rami, Rava asks, Ksiv, the pasuk says, now if you just read it the way it's written, so you read it with a shin, then you can read it Yishamach. But Ukerinon, the way it's read though is Yisamach. What does this mean? So this is a pasuk. Where does it say the pasuk? Yayin Yisamach. Yayin Yisamach levav enish. That's referring to wine. So zacha, if one merits, misamcha. The wine makes you happy. Loi zacha, if you're not zacha, then mishamemeyu. Yishamach could also mean mishamemeyu, makes you crazy. V'hainu dama Rava. This is what Rava said. Chamra v'reichni pikchin. If you drink wine in the proper measure and also a good aroma, this makes one actually wise. This, based on what it says here in the Gemara, this is the reason why when we drink wine, we say l'chaim. L'chaim v'levracha, actually, that it should be, you should use the wine in a proper sense, that it should bring a bracha, or levraka, as we'll see in the continuation of the Gemara. Wine, or we saw here, it could spill blood, it could bring bad results, so therefore you say l'chaim, but it should be for life and for a bracha. Levraka also, soft heart, even after you drink wine. Yeah. Omer Rav Amram, Berei, the Rab Shimon bar Abba, Omer Rab Chanina. What's the meaning of the pasuk where it says Lemiyoi, Lemiyavoy, to who says Oy Vavoy, that it says that he's suffering, Lemi Medanim, who has quarrels, Lemi Siach, who has complaints, Lemi Petzayim, who Petzayim Chinam, injuries for no reason, Lemi Chachlilis Anayim, who has red eyes from his drinking wine. Lamachrim alayayin, the ones that are delayed because of them following wine, Labam Lachka Mimsach, the ones that are researching, going after the wines that are made with besamim. So what is the meaning of this pasuk? So Kiyasa Rav Dimi Amar, Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael, he said, Omri b'Marava, in the west, in Eretz Yisrael, they say, Hai Kra, this pasuk here, Man de Darish Le Mireisha L'Seife, Midrash. You can dash in the pasuk from the beginning to the end, and that's a right drasha. Meaning, how do you dash it from the beginning? As a simple pshat of the pasuk. The pasuk is asking, who's going to have all this suffering? Who's going to have suffering and quarrels and complaints and red eyes and so on? That's the one that's following and has too much wine. It's not good for him to too much wine. That's one way to dash in the pasuk. But when we say for the reishe midrash, you could also dash in the pasuk from the end of the pasuk to the beginning of the pasuk, which means that in the end of the pasuk where it says the one that has wine, so you dash it from the end of the pasuk. Who should have wine? Who should be the one that should have for himself wine? So then you go back to the beginning of the pasuk, one that's suffering and one that is in a bad place. The Eibusha creates wine in the proper measure to drink wine to relieve his suffering. So the Gemara weiter, Omar, Darish, that is Darish Oiver Glila. Oiver Glila is in Amayra. He darshent Yud Gimel Vavin Nemru B'Yayin. It says 13 times Vavin, the letter Vav, actually a Vav and a Yud also, regarding wine. This is when Noach, after the Mabul, he planted a vineyard and then he drank wine, and there was a very bad outcome, as we'll see the details here in the Gemara. And there, as a result of him drinking wine, it says 13 times Vavin, Vai, which is saying Vai Oi. What are the 13 times? It says Vayochal Noach ish Adam vayitaker vayesh min hayayim vayishkar vayizgal b'saycholoi vayarcha mavi kanan eserves aviv vayaged l'shneiach b'chutz vayikach shem v'yefes. As a similar vayasim al shachem shneim vayelcho acharanes vayachas eserves avim upneim v'gaimer. And then vayikatz Noach miyena vayedes hashasalei b'nei cotton. So the whole story there with Noach, that he drank and he was drunk and he lay uncovered, and then his sons came and covered him. So it says 13 times the Vav and the Yud, which is Vai. When you drink wine, this is the Oivei that happens. So now Rav Shmuel argued about what exactly it is that Cham and Yefes did to him. Chad Amar, one says Sersei, they castrated him. They didn't want him to have another child. Chad Amar Rovai. The other said, no, they had a physical relation with him. The one that says they castrated him, why did they do this? So now, what's the source for this rather? Where do we see this? Because they did something here to prevent them of having a fourth child. Then, when Noach cursed his son Cham, he didn't curse Cham himself. He cursed the fourth son of Cham, which was Canaan. Why the fourth son? Because he prevented him of having a fourth child. But the one that says, no, he had a physical relation with him, Gomar, he learns out from what it says here, Vayar, that he saw. And it says Vayar in another place as well. Vayar Chama v'Kanan, a service of Aviv. And then the pasuk says, by Shechem, Vayar Isa Shechem ben Chamer v'Gomer. When Shechem took Dinah, when it says there he saw her, it means that he took her for a relation with him. That's the source that over here also means Ravai. So the Gemara asks, the opinion that says that he prevented him of having a child, as we explained before, that's why he cursed him with his fourth child. But the one that says Ravai, why the fourth child did he curse him? So the simple pshat of the Gemara is it's asking why wasn't Cham himself cursed? Why didn't Noach that is curse Cham himself? But Taisus here actually says that he didn't curse Cham himself because the Eibishter actually benched Noach and his children. So if the Eibishter benched, he can't curse. But the question of the Gemara is, some take out the word behedye, but the Gemara is just asking, why did he curse after the fourth child? Why not the first child? And says the Gemara, even according to this opinion, that Ravai, Havai, he's saying that actually they did both. That he had a relation with him and he also castrated him, and that's why he was cursed with his fourth child, like the other opinion. Now the Gemara brings what it says there, Vayachal Noach Ish Adama v'yita Karem, that Noach Ish Adama, he desecrated himself and he planted a vineyard. Now it refers to Noach as being a Ish Adama. Why Ish Adama? Amar Rav Chisda, Amar Rav Ukva, Amar Rav Ukva, Amar Rav Zakai, Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu Noach, the Eibusha said to Noach, Noach, lehoy lecha lilmaid ma'adam arishain. Didn't you have to learn from what Adam Arishain did? Shleigarim lo yelayain. What caused his downfall? That he ate from the Eitz Hadas. He ate from the Eitz Hadas, which was a vineyard. So therefore, Adam is the Ish Adama because he was created from earth. So therefore, Noach is referred to as Ish Adama because this is the taina the Eibishter had against Noach. Why didn't you learn from Adam Ish Adama? So the Gemara now says this that we're saying that the Eitz Hadas was a vineyard. Kaman, according to whose opinion is this? Command Dama, that is, according to this opinion that says that Oisi Ilan Sha'acham Menu Adam Merishayin, the Eitz Hadas, that Adam Merishayin ate from it, Gefenaya, it was a vineyard. And here the Gemara brings that there's a few opinions about what the Eitz Hadas was. The Tanya, whether it's Nabraise, Rav Meir says, Oisai Ilan Sha'achal Adam Merishayin Mimenu Gefenaya. Rav Meir says it was a vineyard. Why? How do we know? She'ein lecha davar, Amid Beis, she'ein lecha davar shemevi la adam. There's nothing that brings wailing to a person, ela yain. If you drink wine. If you drink too much wine, it brings wailing. Therefore, this is the first time it brought the Aveda and the wailing was wine. Rabbi Yudah says, chita hoya. No, it was actually wheat that he ate from. That's what ate. It wasn't really a tree, it was wheat. Why? She'ein atinik yedei likris abba v'ima. A child doesn't have the awareness to refer to his father and mother as father and mother until he tastes the taste from grain. And since it's called the Eitz Hadas Yodi Toivera, so that means that it was a chita, that you get the das to know, to call father. Rab Nechemi says Te'ena Hoya, that it was a fig. Shebedava shekilkalu by niskanu. And the source for this is because with this that they sinned, it was with this that they also got afterwards a tikkun, the tikkun that they were able to dress themselves when they realize that they have no clothing. And where did they get their clothing from? It's because the pasuk says Shanema v'yispuru aliteina. They got the clothing from the leaves of a fig tree. So that's what the tikkun, that how they covered themselves, and that because that was also the source what they sinned with the fig tree. Rashi here brings that this is the mid of the Eibishter, that if someone gets an injury with a ismo, with some piece of iron tool, it's that iron itself that could then heal you. They make a surgery with that same iron tool, or it says by the Chorban Beis Hamikdash, Vayates Eish B'tzion, that the fire burns Yerushalayim, and Vani Eilanu Hashem Chaimes Eish Saviv, and it's the same fire that will be a protection for Yidden. So you see that the same thing that brings the destruction brings also the makkah, brings also the healing. This Gemara here that speaks about the Eitz Hadas, and it says whether it was wine or it was chita, wheat, or fig, it's brought in Chassidus also. The Rebbe Rashab speaks about this Barichus in Kuntris Eitz HaChaim. He says there that the Eitz Hadas, the MS, was a tree that was Kedusha. The Eitz Hadas, if it was a chita, he says the chita refers to a level in Torah, and brings it from the Zoyar. Elamai, it's when one has the das of Torah, only nigla the Torah. When you only learn the seichel of the Torah, and only one level of Torah, but not the pnimius of the Torah and the connection to the Eibishter, the Eitz HaChaim, which is the source, Elokos, which is beyond the Metzias of the world. If one connects to the Eibishter, and to him, the level of connection to the Eibishter consists just of the fact, the way he understands Elokos within the framework of the Metzias of the world, that's the shleimus of the way he relates to the Eibishter, that's the downfall of Chet Eitz Hadas. That's how the Rebbe Rashab explains this. Okay, now here the Gemara brings from Mishlei, Very interesting. The pasuk there is a whole Perek in Mishlei that Shlomo Melech is repeating the Musar that his mother gave him. And according to some Mefarshim, this refers to the first day of the building of the Beis Hamikdash that Shlomo Melech built. On that very same day, so Shlomo Melech got married to Bas Parei, or Bas Parei from Mitzrayim, and the night of the Chasana, and he was up late, and then the next morning, he didn't wake up in the morning to be able to open up the Beis Hamikdash, and the key to go into the Beis Hamikdash was under his pillow, and he was sleeping, and they couldn't go in to bring the carbon tamid. So after this happened, his mother gave him a ganze Musa speech, and here this is the kapitel in Mishlei that Shlomo Melech is repeating what his mother told him. Divrei Lemuel Melech Masa Ashi Yisrasi Imai. Lemuel Melech, Lemuel is a nickname for Shlomo, and he's called Lemuel because Lomai Kael, because he was for the sake of Hashem. That's why he's called Lemuel Melech, and this is the Musar that his mother gave him. So Rabbi Yechanan Shon Rabbi Shimon ben Yechi Melamed. It's not only she gave him Musar, but it teaches us Shekafasa Yimai ala Amud. She strapped him to a beam to hit him for what he did. They couldn't open the Beis Hamikdash. Va'amarulai, and she said to him, Ma beri, what's with you, my son? Uma bar bitni, what's the one that comes from my womb? Uma bar nedari, the one that comes from my vow. What was she saying? So the Gemara explains, Ma beri, what's with you, my son? Hakol yedim, everybody knows Shavicha Yirei Shamayim Ave, that your father was a God-fearing person. So if so, when they see your behavior, so Achshav Yoimuru, and now everyone's going to say, it must be Ima Garmalai, that your behavior comes from your mother. His mother was Basheva, that it's only from your mother that you're behaving this way. And people are going to say that maybe your father is not David HaMelech. I was pregnant from someone else. And then she said, Ma bar bitni, what you're from my womb, and she's explained, Kol anashim shel beis avicha, all the other wives of your father, David HaMelech, we learned before in the Masechta, David HaMelech had many wives. Kivin shemis abreis, once they were pregnant from him, shuv einin reis pnei HaMelech, they didn't come to see the king again. Vani dachakti v'nichnasti, but even me, after I was pregnant, that is, I pushed and I went into the king again, kidei sheyeheli ben mezuris u'meluban, so that I should have a son that will have a good nature and it'll be beautiful. Because the Rashi brings from the Gemara in Nida that says that tashmish in the later part of the pregnancy is good for the child, and I did this for your sake. And then she said, Ma bar nidri, that you're the one that I made a vow for you. She says, Kol nashim shel beis avicha, all other wives of your father, they made a vow that Yehei li ben hagen lamalchos, that I should have a son that should be befitting to be a king. But vanina darti, my vow was, Valmarti, I said, Yehei li ben zariz umimula b'teire v'hagen lenevias, that he should be a child that should be quick and alacrity and filled with Torah and be proper for prophecy. And so therefore this was the musa that she was giving to him. And then she said, Al l'malachim l'maluel, al l'malachim shasa yayin. What does this mean? That Maluel, again, a nickname for Shlomo Melech, that you should not be drinking wine. Al l'malachim amra loy, she said to him, Malacha eitzum malachim shashoisim yayin umishtakrim. Why are you like kings that drink wine and get intoxicated? And they say, Lama lanu kel, we don't need Hashem. That's what she was saying to him. Al malachim l'malul, that they say they drink wine and then they say they don't need Hashem. And then she continued in the same pasuk. It says, "Uleroiznim ei sheichar." What does this mean? Uleroiznim ei sheichar. Misha kol razei olam galuyim lai. An individual that all the secrets of the world are open to him. Shlomo HaMelech, he was the greatest, and most wisest person. Yishte yayim v'yishtakar. He drinks wine and becomes intoxicated. Ikadamri, others say that the Leroiznim here means Misha kol roiznei olam mashkimim lepischai. The one that all the roiznei olam, the ones that are in the highest level and the secrets of the world, they always come early to him in the morning. This refers to the Sanhedrin that come to Shlomo HaMelech. So yishte yayim v'yishtakar. He should drink wine and become intoxicated. This is the musar that his mother gave him after the story, when he got intoxicated and he wasn't up in the morning for them to be able to open the Beis Hamikdash. Rabbi Yitzchak says about this. How do we know that Shlomo HaMelech accepted this musa and he admitted to his mother? Because the pasuk there says that Kibar anochi meish, I am foolish from a man, v'loi binas adamli, and I don't have the wisdom of Adam. What was he saying here? He was accepting the musa of his mother not to drink. He said, Kibar anochi meish, who's this ish? Mi Noach. Noach is the ish. T'chsev vayachal Noach ish ha'adama. So he says that I was more foolish than the behavior of Noach. V'loi binas Adam li ze Adam Arishan. I don't have the wisdom of even Adam Arishan. He was worse than Adam Arishan. Adam Arishan, Adam. Okay, that's the conclusion of this whole Indian B'nigaya to not drinking wine. So it says in Sfarim that this is the reason why, when it comes to many mitzvahs, it's done dafka with wine, to be mechaper on all the averes that were done with wine. That you should use wine for a mitzvah properly, for kiddush, and for every other occasion when you make a bracha, and it has to be with wine. Okay, going back to the Mishnah, it said, Ocha b'chaburis mitzvah, if the ben Seirer Meire, so he ate meat and drank wine, but it wasn't a mitzvah, then he's not a ben Seirer Meire. Amar Abavo, so Abavo says, B'chlal, this that we said, that he eats meat and drinks wine, it's only if he's eating it with a group of sarikin, empty people. In fact, the Gemara, how could you say this? But in the Mishnah it said, if he's eating in a group with them for mitzvah, then he won't be a ben Seirer Meire. Now, so time the mitzvah. That means that only because it's for the sake of a mitzvah, he won't become a ben Seirer Meire. Halav mitzvah, but if it's not for the sake of mitzvah, even lav kula sirikin, even if they're not all sirikin, they're not all empty people, he's still going to become a ben Seirer Meire. So how could Rabbi say that only if you eat with these sirikin, do you become a ben Seirer Meire? So the Gemara answers, no. Hakamash malon. No, the Mishnah is coming to say the alpha gav the kula sirikin, even if he's eating with all of these wild, empty people, but nevertheless, giving them a mitzvah kasik. If he's doing it and it's in it for the sake of a mitzvah, le mimshach. He's not going to draw after this to eat and drink more meat and wine. So then he's not going to be a ben Seirer Meire. Achal be'ibra chaydesh. The Mishnah says if he ate and drank meat and wine by the suda of the ibra chaydesh, so then also he won't be a ben Seirer Meire. So first the Gemara points out a detail about this. The memra, should we say, the basa v'yayim masku, that they brought meat and wine by the suda of the ibra chaydesh. But Vatanya, we learned in the Braisa, ein oilin lo ela bepaz dogon. They go up to eat this suda of the ibra chaydesh, and they only had bread from grain, the kitnis and beans, bilvad, that's all they ate. So why are we saying that over here there's meat and wine? And it says the Gemara, Hakamash Malon, what the Mishnah is saying is, Afagav the kitnis, even though usually by this suda of Ibra Chaydish it's only bread and beans, but V'iyu Asik Basa V'yayin, he brought meat and wine to eat by this suda, V'achal, but Kivin the Mitzvah Kasik Le Mimshach, because he was involved in a mitzvah, so we're not afraid that he's going to follow and continue with this behavior. Now here the Gemara brings the details about the suda of Ibra Chaydish. Tana Rabbana, we learned in the Braisa, Ein Oilim be'Ibra Chaydish, when they make this suda for the Ibra Chaydish. The Ibra Chaydish refers to the fact that the month has 30 days. The month could be 29 days, and the 30th day is already Aleph, or the 30th day means that it's a full month, and then the 31st day is Aleph. So now, when they're making the suda on Ibra Chaydish, it's when there's a full Chaydish of 30 days. So when they make this suda, they don't go up Pachas Masara b'nei Adam. It's not less than 10 people. And what they eat is bread, grain, and kitnis, beans. They go up to make the suda the night after the 30th day. That's Rashi's pshat. And they don't go up during the day. They go up already when it's dark by night. What's the point of this whole suda that they're making here? So Rashi here brings the point of them making the suda is because then when it comes to the next day, the 31st day, which will be Aleph of the next month, the Bezdin doesn't even announce Mekudesh. Once the previous Chaydish was 30 days, the next day it becomes Aleph automatically. So they made this special Suda in order to make a commotion about this, that people should realize that there was a 30th day to the previous Chaydish. So they should realize that the Rosh Chaydish is tomorrow. So they made this special Suda and they brought up 10 people. And so Rashi says, the point of this Suda was not for them to sit and to analyze whether they should be Ma'abed or Chaydish or not. Then it would be the night before. And also they wouldn't need 10 people. You just need 3 people for that. But it's 10 people and they made the Suda just to publicize the fact that this Chaydish has 30 days. So now in this Braisa it said that when they go up to make the Suda, they don't go by day, but they go by night. In fact, the Gemara about Tanya and Braisa, we learned they don't go by night. They go to make the Suda by day. Says the Gemara, Rabchia said to his children, when you go to this Suda for the Ibra Chaydesh, you should go early. You are going at night, but you should go a little bit before it's dark outside, so people should see. People should see that there's people, 10 people coming, carrying food and going up to make a Suda, and also they're there a whole night. and then when they finish their meal, don't come out late in the morning, because then it won't look unusual. Looks like you just coming the regular time. But come out very early in the morning, and people will see very early in the morning 10 people coming out from a Suda, and this will remind people that there was a Ibra Chaydish, that there was a 30th day. So people should realize and know about this. It should be publicized. So this is the Suda of the Ibra Chaydish. If Ben Seder Amaira came and joined this, and even if he ate basa and drank wine there, he's not going to be a Ben Seder Amaira.
It's a Sudas mitzvah.
It's considered to be a Sudas mitzvah. Sagt the Gemara, it said in the Mishnah, Achal Maisa Sheni b'Yerushalayim. So he ate Maisa Sheni in Yerushalayim. He's also not going to be a Ben Seder Amaira. Why not? Says the Gemara, Kivin dechi orchi huka achalei loy mimshech. Because what he's doing is actually what's customary regarding the Maisa Sheni. Rashi here brings the pasuk about Maisa Sheni. It says, what do you do with the money of Maisa Sheni? You buy from it bakar, tzayin, yayin, sheichar. You buy meat and wine. So therefore, this is what's usually bought with it. So therefore, he's not going to be chayiv for Ben Seder Amaira. Now Rashi here says this is even the case there is that he's stealing the Maisa Sheni, right? And then he goes and buys for cheap, as we said before. He buys for cheap the meat and the wine. Here Rashi points out that if this Ben Seder Amaira is stealing the actual meat and wine from his father, he won't be a Ben Seder Amaira. It's only if he steals the money from his father, or in this case, the money he stole from the Maisa Sheni, and then he goes and buys for cheap. Because only then do we say, he gets a good price, so he's going to be nimshach to do this again and again. Okay, the next thing it said in the Mishnah, Kive achal nevelas, it is. Achal nevelas and treifis shkatzim uramasim. If you eat non-kosher meat, that's nevelas and treifis. But then the Mishnah also said shkatzim uramasim. Shkatzim uramasim is creeping and crawling things, which would be referring not to meat from animals. And even for this, the Mishnah has to come and tell you that he won't be a Ben Seder Amaira. Okay, so now the Gemara has a question on this, because Omar Rava said, Achal basar oif, if the meat that he ate is not meat, it's basar oif, chicken, then ain't an asa Ben Seder Amaira. He will not become a Ben Seder Amaira. But the question is, for ha'anam t'nam, but in the Mishnah it says, Achal nevelis atreifis shkatzim uramasim, ain't an asa Ben Seder Amaira. So it says nevelis and treifis, that could be referring to meat. But shkatzim uramasim does not refer to meat. It could only be referring to chicken. And it has to come and say that it doesn't become a Ben Seder Amaira. Why? Because it's non-kosher food. That's the Gemara Sung in a Darshan. Ha tahidim. But if it was kosher, seemingly from chicken, then nasa Ben Seder Amaira. He will become a Ben Seder Amaira. Says the Gemara, no. Really, if he only ate from basar oif, he will not become a Ben Seder Amaira. Kitna nami masnisim. When it says in the Mishnah regarding it, it includes also shkatzim uramasim, it's lahashlim. Lahashlim, so Rashi says what this means is, he ate basar. As we said in the Mishnah, what's the amount of basar? A tartimar of basar. Let's say he ate that amount of basar minus a kazayas. And just to be mashlim the shear, raiv of it, he ate already regular basar. But just to be mashlim the shear, then that's even if it's basar oif, he'll be chayiv. And it's on that the Mishnah said that if it's from kosher basar oif, from chicken, not if it's shkatzim uramasim. Now, achal, the Mishnah went on to say, achal davashuhu mitzvah, of a dvar aveda, if he ate for a mitzvah or for a aveda, he's not going to be a Ben Seder Amaira. So what is this referring to? We already said before, chaburas mitzvah. He's not going to be a Ben Seder Amaira. What's this dvar mitzvah the Mishnah is talking about here? Dvar mitzvah means tanchumi avelim. To eat when they make the suda to console avelim, this is not a mitzvah min HaTorah. This is just chachamim instituted to do this. And nevertheless, it's also going to be something that he's not chayiv for. In the Reish of the Mishnah, when it said chaburas mitzvah, that's talking about eating kotchem or eating a carbon pesach. Here it's saying even on something that's only midrabanan. And dvar aveda also something that's not minat Torah, tainus tzibur. He ate on a tainus tzibur. So what's the source for this? That in such a case, he's not going to be chayiv for Ben Seder Amaira, because on Makra, the pasuk says, "Einenu shemeya b'koleinu." The father is saying that he doesn't listen to our voice. B'koleinu, v'lo b'koleinu shel makom. So that's only if he's eating kosher meat, and not if he's eating something that's not allowed. Even if it's not allowed midrabanan, it's still not called koleinu. He's not listening to the Eibishter. And that's also the reason for nevelis today for shkatzim uramasim, because you can't say on this koleinu. The next thing the Mishnah said, Achal kol maicha v'lo achal basar, shasta kol mashke v'lo shasta yain. He ate other foods, but not meat. He drinks all kinds of drinks, but not wine. He's not a Ben Seder Amaira. So the Gemara explains, Achal kol maicha v'lo achal basar, when it says anything he ate. Lasuye devele keilis. Even this unique fig that comes from this place, keilis, which is very, it's like a food that's mamish intoxicating, and also shasta kol mashke. It says he drank all kinds of beverages and not wine. This is lasuye dvash chalav. Even if he drank honey and milk, which could be intoxicating. The Tanya, as we learned in the Braise, Ochal Dvele Kehilis, someone that eats this fig from Kehilis, V'shasa Dvash V'cholav, and he drinks honey or wine, V'nichnas L'mikdash, and he becomes intoxicated by this, and he enters into the Beis HaMikdash, and he's shikir, Chayiv, he's going to be chayiv for the issa that it says Yayin v'shecher al teish, that the kohen that shouldn't go into the Beis HaMikdash shikir. So that's the pshat in the Mishnah that it's saying that that's true by the issa of going into the Beis HaMikdash intoxicated, even if it's other beverages that causes this, but not by the Ben Seder Meira. By the Ben Seder Meira, it has to be specifically meat and wine.